Magnus wants to win it or take it to tie breaks, and the match has started. Here we go, David.
Yeah, the tournament all hinges on this game now. The first game of this final day has begun, and it's the Reti opening. Magnus brings his knight out on the first move with white, and Praggnanandhaa reacts in classical fashion. Black occupies the centre with a pawn. And Magnus taking a quieter approach, just getting ready to fianchetto his bishop. Pragg continuing his strategy of throwing those pawns forward. And this is still very standard stuff. Magnus, throughout the event here, throughout the FTX Crypto Cup, he has started a bit slowly. This is something we were discussing before the show, and having the white pieces should help with that. Normally, it's easier to kind of start well, get a good opening, get a good start to the day when you have white. But Pragg, he's been very aggressive in general with both colours, right? What do you guys think of this opening choice from Magnus?
Yeah, I think a wise opening choice. I mean, when you're playing someone so young like Pragg, you probably don't want to duel them with cutting-edge theory because they're going to be very well prepared for that. And I feel like Pragg might have better cutting-edge theory than Magnus. So he's trying to just take him into what is now a reverse Grunfeld opening and just take him into a position where he can get a game and play. But Pragg at the moment playing extremely quickly as well. And we see some standard moves on the board here with quite a solid start to the game so far.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Simon, this position could arise from the Grunfeld defence with colours reversed. Here, white has an extra tempo compared to that opening because you start with the first move. But Pragg, one thing I will say, against the Grunfeld, he's had a lot of success using this system. So again, with colours reversed, with the white pieces, he likes to make this exchange that's just happened in the centre. He likes to bring his bishop out. If we kind of rewind a couple of months back, when Pragg played this fantastic game against Jordan van Foreest with all these sacrifices, all these spectacular tactics, and he won, that was the Grunfeld. Pragg had white, and it was this exact position just with reverse colours. So he's just using that pattern recognition. He realises what type of position he likes, where he's had success, and he's trying to kind of replicate that, despite the fact he's got black here in this game, and that's quite clever. Such
a key idea, that, I think. I mean, everyone at home should be doing that as well. You've got to recognise what kind of positions you enjoy playing. And when I'm saying positions, mainly like middle game positions, and you want to always try to steer the game into things that you're favourable playing, whether that's a tactical battle or certain pawn structures, as we're seeing Pragg do here, because you're going to play better in positions you're comfortable with, right?
Yeah.
So.
And I'm just checking the database, and I can actually see that Praggnanandhaa has played this before with the black pieces. In fact, not that long ago in the Norway chess, not the big tournament, but the open tournament, and there he played against a Bulgarian grandmaster, and it was a draw. So Magnus now has a choice. You know, what's he going to do with the knight? Capture knights, trade knights, or just move the knight back?
Yeah, white's knight in the centre of the board has that big decision to make. I think the most popular move, or at least the move with the best reputation up until recently, was to retreat this knight. But maybe Magnus had it in mind that Pragg loves those types of positions, so instead he's swapped off a set of pieces, heading closer to an endgame. And now white is going to try and open up the diagonal for his light-squared bishop. White's light-squared bishop in front of his king is the key piece here. It's staring against black's centre from afar. Black's pawn centre there, if it can stay intact, will ensure Praggnanandhaa good long-term chances. But if Magnus can break open the centre, maybe start using his pawn majority on this left side of the board, then white will be doing well. So it's kind of double-edged. Both sides have reasons to be happy. White's queen now indirectly attacking black's dark-squared bishop on this c-line. And yeah, this game, I guess it will just be about understanding the next handful of moves, at least, where to put the pieces, how to continue developing, especially from the black side. Black's king needs to get to safety.
Yeah, and white already has a threat on the board to play pawn takes pawn, and that is why Praggnanandhaa simply moves his queen, protects the bishop. And they're still following that game that I referenced earlier. And in that game, white actually developed the dark-squared bishop out to g5 to pin the knight.
Magnus there, he was just taking a sip of water, but then he kind of paused when he saw this last move from Praggnanandhaa. OK, he's laughing again now. By this point, we're used to this from Magnus. Seems to be a daily occurrence. But there's some calculation to be done, because this last move, to me, initially, it looked like it was impossible, just because there are some tactics now to calculate. Magnus looking away, laughing, not entirely focused perhaps yet. But if we just jump into the position, just while Magnus kind of recomposes himself, you guys mentioned there's a threat potentially along this c-file. If you trade off a set of pawns in the center now, if you make this trade, you can, at least if you're new to this position, which I pretty much am at this moment, you can push this pawn forward. Asking this black bishop a question, it's defended by its queen, but it needs to move now, being attacked by a pawn. If the bishop moves out the way, white has a nasty check, and suddenly the black king in a bit of trouble. And I'm just wondering what Praggnanandhaa's idea would be here. The black rook in the corner will fall off once black meets that check to his king. And if we go back a couple of moves...
you could step forward with the bishop.
Yeah, maybe
attack
you could
the rook.
hit this rook in the corner. Just by the speed with which Pragg has played, and also the fact that you mentioned he's played it before, Jovanka, means that clearly black isn't losing here. Otherwise, the evaluation bar would have shot up. But still some calculation to be done for Magnus if he hasn't studied this. A check now, I guess, would be met by a queen block. And if white's queen captures the rook in the corner, at the very least, black could do the same, capture white's rook in the corner of the board. Maybe you could also castle the black king and argue that the white queen is trapped. Next move, black's bishop will move out the way. And, for example, if white, I don't know, pushes a pawn, this bishop might move out the way, and this queen is a goner. So really complicated stuff already. It's really sharp stuff. The players definitely... especially Pragg here, looks well prepared in the opening. Magnus decided, if we go back to the game position, not to enter any murky complications. That's wise. Pragg is clearly ready for anything messy that appears on the board, so Magnus just develops his pieces. He'll develop this knight, next he'll develop this bishop, connect his rooks, and the game will go on. I'm expecting Pragg now to castle with haste. And, yeah, in the balance.
And Magnus laughing again. We did hear rumors yesterday. There is a podcast he's listening to, probably one of his favorite podcasts. Must be a funny one. And it was interesting, right? Hearing from Levon before the start of today, saying that it's more enjoyable because he can listen to music. And it's very... We're not used to this when seeing chess. Players smiling, laughing. But maybe this simply is the new life when it comes to online chess. Because obviously you can listen to whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite refreshing to see someone enjoying themselves. But at the same time, and I think this works in online chess because the two players do have a computer. Because it would be incredibly distracting if you were playing over the board chess and, you know, someone had the headsets and was like bopping away or like laughing themselves silly. You know, I would be like, come on, get serious. Yeah. But then again, I like this kind of move towards, you know, I don't see why chess has to be so introverted. I mean, it could be super extroverted as well, involving as many people as possible. And we do see Magnus develop the dark squared bishop. And I just want to introduce our competition, our quiz of the day.
And it's a cool one.
It is a very cool one, because today we are asking for you to caption this picture.
Yeah.
And maybe we can put it up on the screen.
We have to get that picture up. Oh,
there it is.
Yes.
And there we see young Praggnanandhaa, yesterday's unfortunate moment. And we're asking, caption this. You don't need to edit the picture. Just caption, put in your caption into the tweet. And remember to use the hashtag #ChessChamps. And can't wait to read out your answer. The best caption will win 1 year's Chess24 subscription.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this. Our creative viewers, what will you find as a creative caption to that Pragg picture? Go ahead and join the competition for 1 year Chess24 Premium. All right, we have some moves in this dramatic game, David.
Yeah, and Pragg is just following conventional wisdom here. Normally, in this type of position, when there's no direct tactics anymore, there's no big attacks yet, it's just wise to improve your placed piece, and that black light square bishop was doing nothing, sat at home, therefore it's come out, and Magnus reacts by putting his knight on the side of the board. We normally say don't do this, knights are terrible on the side of the board, but it's actually an outpost. This white knight can't ever get kicked away by a black pawn, therefore it stands relatively well, also putting some big pressure on black's dark square bishop. So that dark square bishop will now most likely take a step back, will retreat, and it's just about who can place their pieces better. I love what both sides have done with their pieces. Nicely centralized, all on active squares. Next, both sides will try and bring their rooks into the game. And it does feel like this is the calm before the storm. Whose position do you prefer? Simon, Jovanka? To me, I mean, I'd happily take both sides here.
Yeah, I think both players just playing good moves at the moment. You can't fault anything that's been done. I kind of like what Magnus has done to get a position which is less theoretical and more about the plans. I think he's going to try to use that experience he's got and try not to make it too tactical at the moment. Maybe later on we'll see that. But Pragg, of course, has played very well. He's got a very strong centre. His pawns are doing a good job. He's got all his pieces developed. So it's probably an equal position. But if you look at most of Magnus's games, that just doesn't bother him at all. When he's got the white pieces, he often goes to equal positions. Even sometimes he will go for slightly worse positions because he knows the plans and he's more comfortable in those types of structures. I would kind of like to know what he's listening to. I think someone said a Norwegian comedy show. I don't know if that's an oxymoron. We mentioned that before or not. Just see if I get in trouble now. Nope, it's all gone quiet. OK. So I don't know. What is good comedy shows? I'd like to know. But obviously something is making him laugh a lot. I mean, but it amazes me because I've done a lot of streaming, a lot of other stuff. And when I'm playing chess, I can't have any distractions. I mean, I can put some music on, but I can't listen to a podcast and understand what they're saying and laugh about that podcast and play a good game of chess. It just bewilders me that he's able to do that. How's he able to do two things like that? I find it like quite, miraculous, really. I mean, could you do that, David? Could you listen to, a comedy podcast and play great level chess at the same time? It's amazing, really.
It's incredible. Anyone who knows me knows I can't multitask, so I couldn't do it. I guess it's maybe similar to if you imagine especially in the US, they have chess in the parks and all these hustlers in Washington Square Park, and they're just kind of chatting while they play, trying to distract the opponent and kind of giving that banter back and forth. And I guess some players have grown up with that. Most people grow up where chess is kind of a silent game in a big tournament hall and you can't distract your opponent. But clearly this is adding a new dimension, this esports arena, and Magnus seems to be thriving on it. Meanwhile, a trade of dark squared bishops and white's rooks are starting to gravitate towards the centre. White's rooks need to be improved, the black rooks need to be improved. Black's queen also feeling a bit uncomfortable. I'm expecting her to run away at some point in the next few turns. OK, there we go. Praggnanandhaa puts his queen back on a nice safe square. I still like Black's pawn centre, to be honest. This kind of triangle formation that Black has in the middle of the board with his pawns. Rock solid. How do you ever break those down? Pragg does not look too concerned either. He looks pretty content with how the opening has gone.
Yeah. I mean, it does look like Pragg's position is pretty solid, but I have to say I'm still loving White's position. I just think that his position, especially when you bear in mind the match situation, where he just needs to tie the rapid portion, I think this is also quite nice for him. He has the choice. I think this move is actually maybe... I was going to say I like it, but then I stopped and I was like, hang on a second, think of it deeply. I mean, it's quite a committal move, actually, because... yes, it reinforces the centre, but also there's a lot of tension on the board. White always has the possibility of capturing the pawn. Maybe Black can also capture the pawn as well. And Pragg switching sides, and he's put his rook on the B line.
If you like these types of positions, Jovanka, you should play the Grunfeld defence. You get these types of positions on a regular basis.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, this is still a Grunfeld in nature, with the pawn structure, with the pieces. White, Magnus here, he's borrowing all of the kind of ideas from that opening and now stepping forward with the white queen. White's queen wants to actually go to the left side of the board, start harassing that lonely black bishop. Black's bishop out there, it's actually... I praised him putting it there a few moves ago, but it's a bit of a target for White's queen and knight. So Pragg has to guard against that potential threat.
I would have...
Yeah, sorry, Simon.
No, I would have thought Magnus would be very comfortable, actually, just the way this has gone. I mean, I think it's kind of a big advantage for Magnus having the white pieces in this first game because he's been, as you mentioned, very fragile. In the first game, he lost to Hans, he lost to yesterday, he got smashed by Firouzja. He's lost a lot of the first rounds.
Duda as well.
Duda, and having white means he can control the way the game goes. So he wanted this position from move one. He's got what he wants. And that's you know, if we compare it to his Carlsen in the first game yesterday, he certainly didn't want that position. We all know the Carlsen's a rubbish opening. Just wanted to just look at you there. I joke, it's not a rubbish opening. It's a fantastic opening, and if you want to learn it, then Ivanka's got some fantastic books on it. But he's got a kind of position he wants, and that is very important just to get safely into the match. And let's remember, Pragg has to win in the 4 games. He can't go to the playoff if he wants to win the whole thing. I mean, what a story that would be, though. I mean, you know, I'm a bit sick of Magnus winning everything. Let's, you know, he wins everything. Let's just let Pragg have a chance. Well, you know, it'll be a great story.
Yeah, and we did hear from Tanya. It was 50-50 with the spectators she talked to. And we're going to go back to Tanya in Miami. What is the mood and the vibe like now, Tanya, that the match has started?
It's just such a great atmosphere here, Kaya. The players are loving it. Everyone who's here for the Semmel, they're talking about all the action that's going on this one big matchup. And I've got a Magnus supporter and a Pragg supporter here with me. Roy and Grant joining us. Hey guys, how are you doing?
We are doing amazing. Thank you.
Are you having fun with your chess weekend in Miami?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great.
And I mean, this matchup, right? Given our tournament, the way it's shaped up, we could not have asked for a better final.
Definitely. I'm definitely rooting for Pragg today. He has done an amazing job. Like in the beginning, he fumbled a little bit last 2 games, but then I'm definitely sure today he's gonna come back, bounce back.
Big moment for Pragg, because if he wins this, he wins the match. What do you think it's going to take for him to strike down Magnus?
I think it's just the time pressure if he maintains his nerves, and I think he gonna do great. And he has done it before against Magnus, so I'm definitely looking for it.
All right, and of course, it's hard to bet against Magnus now. Grant, what do you think is going to happen today?
Right. So obviously, I think you know, Pragg kind of showed how strong he was in that first time he played Magnus and beat him in the blitz round. But then we saw Magnus beat him again, right? And so I think that's kind of how Magnus is. Like, once you beat him once, he never forgets it, and then he just presses on. And so I think he's going to come out probably with the Catalan, and we'll see how Pragg handles it. But yeah, it should be a great match. I'm looking forward to it.
Why do you like Magnus's play so much?
Because he has like very strong strengths, I think, in certain openings. Like, you've seen him dominate with the Catalan all year, pretty much. I think this has been kind of a new trend of his. But also, he's not afraid to just completely come at you with something that you don't have prep for. Because also Magnus knows that people have prep against him in the strongest openings, so he likes to blindside a lot, and that's what he's good at. He's good at taking you in the water and when you don't know how to swim. So.
Kaya, lots of punditry on here, discussions on how the opening's going. It's going to be all about who puts the pressure first and gets that first blow, that first win in the match. Back to you guys in the studio.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Tanya. And, well, some chess fans that definitely know what they're talking about have been following Magnus a lot. And is Magnus getting this game into that water where he's comfortable?
He's definitely going to be very comfortable. This is his style of game. This is his. This is kind of classic Magnus. I've got to praise Grant there that we heard from, because he said Magnus has been dominating with the Catalan, and this is kind of a Catalan opening, or at least a kind of a cousin variation to the Catalan, but it's got all those characteristics. It's all about white's light square bishop. Look how it controls this whole long diagonal. Very typical of that opening, and white has some pressure. It looks very balanced, especially the pawn structure, which is almost symmetrical, but white's pieces are slightly more centralized with the rooks now, the white queen, better placed than the black queen, slightly superior bishops. It's all about whether Pragg can neutralize the initiative that Magnus wants to whip up. And, OK, Pragg takes a timeout to push a pawn. Simon, you're the master of pushing Harry the H-pawn. Is that timid, or is that...
I found it a bit strange. I thought he could have rerouted the knight maybe to the queen side there while he has the opportunity to... I mean, I know if we look at the pieces on the side of the board, they might be key to this position. You've got white's knight on the edge of the board. Knights on the side of the board are generally quite bad, but it's kind of a great piece pointing at black's weak pawn. And you've got black's bishop on the edge of the board, which hasn't got a very good range, but it is also pointing at white's pawn. And I was thinking black maybe missed an opportunity to swap his knight off for that knight, but it's still a very solid position. And I think with that move that Pragg played, just pushing the Harry pawn, he's just saying, you know, I'm going to be patient in this game. There's no rush. I'm going to keep my cool. I think my position is absolutely fine. I don't need to panic. Come on, Magnus. You can't grind me. I'm the Pragg. I think that's basically what he's saying, right? I mean, he's just, confidently playing decent moves there.
Yeah, solid move there from Black, just defending this pawn. I guess White had a threat maybe of entering the Black camp with his rook. Very nasty threat now against the bishop. The bishop is almost trapped. It only has one safe square. It has to retreat, challenging off against White's very strong bishop. And the reason that Black has Pragg here put his rook on this square is because now he defends this pawn. As you mentioned, Simon, it's a target for White's knight. But for now, it all clings together. And Black's knight also doing a good job on this square for now of stopping White's rook entering the 7th rank. This square is covered by Black's knight. And I don't think this would achieve an enormous amount for Magnus. So right now, it's just about how can White improve his pieces. As you mentioned, the knight looks good in a way right now. The White queen is very flexible, but she is tied down to defending the pawn in front of her. White's rooks, beautifully placed, doubled up on the d-file. But what do you do with them? And you definitely don't really want to touch the White bishop. It's a great piece anyway. So, yeah, here is just about instinct and kind of when to go for it. Does Magnus go for it now? Maybe by bringing his rook in?
Would you consider, like, pushing your kingside pawns here?
Yeah,
I mean, like h3 and g4. I mean, because you pointed out all the White's pieces are quite nicely positioned. I mean, I do think White has to be a little bit better here because he's got that open file totally under his control with both of his rooks. 2 rooks on an open file is an ideal scenario, while Black's rooks are not as good. Also prefer his bishop slightly, but what does he do? What does he do next, right? As you pointed out, it's not so easy to find a plan, and we can see that Pragg's waiting. So when your opponent is clearly waiting with a move like Harry 6, you've got a bit more time. So I might consider doing something a little bit weird on the king side here if I was playing White. Potentially. It's a bit of a weird plan, but maybe.
I like this move in general. At least you have a safe square for your king, just in case there's any back rank checks later on. You also stop the Black knight from ever jumping into your half of the board. Yeah. It's kind of a useful move. It's maybe not the most direct, but very useful. And you throw the move back to your opponent. I like it.
Yeah, I like it for those reasons as well, David. And, yeah, such a exciting position. So many things brewing in the future. And... whilst the players are thinking, well, can I read out some of my captions?
Oh, already?
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, there's been fantastic response, and you guys are really knocking it out of the ball when it comes to your captions. So we are asking everyone at home to kind of caption this picture of Pragg. There he is. Oh, poor Pragg. And the best caption wins 1 year subscription of Chess24 Premium membership. And Ian Man says, silence of the champs. Ooh, very good. And Hisham says, is Magnus laughing at my move? And Ashish Kumar Singh says, chess will speak for itself.
Oh, nice one.
Very nice. Keep them coming. Remember to tweet your answers using the hashtag #ChessChamps.
Yeah, very nice. All right, chess will speak for itself, and that is what Pragg needs today. He needs to win it in the rapid portion. He has more time on the clock than Magnus Carlsen, ticking down under 8 minutes now. Magnus made a move with his rook. Anything changing at all?
At least there's a threat in the position. That White rook is attacking Black's bishop on the 6th rank, so that bishop, I would have thought, needs to move. The fact that Pragg paused means that there's actually an alternative, one that I missed originally. But I'm not sure whether he wants to go for this or not. Black does have a bit of a sneaky knight jump into the centre, potentially. But the fact that Pragg has spent 1 minute now when dropping back Black's bishop looks very solid. It's a bit concerning for me. Either he's going to go for something very strong, or he's maybe overthinking things. And what do we think here? Maybe if we jump in, it could be a critical moment. Right now, this bishop is attacked. Simon, do you have any suggestions here?
Yeah, I mean, I think your bishop dropping back just looks very sensible, but you've got the knight jump, and you've also got a weird rook move, haven't you? Trying to get rid of one of White's rooks, because White's rooks are really the only thing that might be giving White an advantage. This one, or even rook b1, I was thinking could be playable.
Move.
I just want to swap off. I just make sure I'm not bluffing. I just want to swap off a rook, right? And I'm saying that very slowly now because I was just sort of like, did I? You know, but it looks all right. But maybe this is what he's thinking of, you know, because obviously you want to get rid of your opponent's best pieces. What are White's best pieces? His rooks. He's gone for the sensible bishop b7, which must be okay as well.
It did cost him a couple of minutes. I like this one, Simon, just to explain to the viewers. You're just pinning White on this first rank, and you're kind of deflecting away this white rook. So it looks like Black's giving up a piece, but when the rook's deflected and distracted away, its other rook drops. And this looks very balanced, very equal, this type of position. So maybe a small opportunity there for Pragg to completely neutralize White's pressure, but instead, yeah, he did play the most obvious one and the very solid bishop retreat. And if the bishops disappear from the board, maybe Pragg will breathe a sigh of relief. Still some pressure, though, some awkward pressure on this pawn. It's just about whether White's knight is well-placed or misplaced, I feel. Also, now that the black bishop's gone away, White has no pressure on this guy, so maybe the white queen is free to kind of jump into the center or maybe even jump the other way. And White will be quite active over the next few moves.
Yeah, and just to kind of mention that there is a pressing threat in this position. Praggnanandhaa is threatening to play bishop takes bishop, and after king takes bishop, the knight will jump forward to the e4 square, forking the queen and the rook. So you need to do something about that. And that is why Magnus, you know, he kind of centralizes his queen. I'm a little bit surprised by that particular maneuver because I actually thought the queen would jump 2 squares forward to the e5 square because, you know, looks much more aggressive.
Yeah. I agree. I was just looking in one of these two directions. You have mentioned in the past, Jovanka, that this is kind of the Goldilocks square, where it's just kind of perfect. It's not too hot, not too cold. You can go in any direction a bit later on. So very flexible square from Magnus, choice of square for his queen, and the bishops have left the board. So now it's just about the heavy pieces, plus these sets of knights. White's knight on the edge of the board has this threat of capturing a pawn now, and Pragg needs to defend against it. Black is still rock solid, but I'm just worried he's too passive, Pragg. He's got to be a bit careful here.
Maybe it's time to sort of try to activate his queen here, possibly. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you that if you look at White's pieces, White still has control of the open file. White has pressure with his queen and his knight. So all the White's pieces are doing something. And I'm trying to work out why, again, the evaluation bar, it doesn't always tell the full side of the story. I mean, maybe this is the evaluation bar if Black finds a series of very accurate moves, because otherwise, you know, he's going to feel the pressure here. But if I was Black, I'd be looking at ways to try and get some activity. So I'm wondering if I can sort of use my queen to check and then either offer a queen, maybe even offer a queen exchange on the next move, possibly here or into this. Here maybe. Yeah. Got to be careful with this rook check, but I think it's okay.
Ooh.
Maybe.
Yeah, you're right.
Again, I say.
Maybe this would be a mistake here because you're right, Simon. This rook check hits the black king, and after a rook trade, maybe you can run to the side of the board. But it's a bit scary. If your rook gets deflected away, then you would lose the black queen. I mean, there's tactics.
I suppose this is the way that, you know, if you can swap the queens, get your rook into the game, you get active. Well, OK, he's gone for another queen move, a bit more passive, this one.
He's playing very defensively, Pragg. I guess there is one active idea. Maybe he wants to go for this white knight. This white knight, again, is it a strength? Is it a weakness? It's unclear at the moment. And he's holding everything together. The more I look at it, the more I think it's quite OK. And yeah, right now I don't really see a way for Magnus to take advantage. Again, I'm always looking for tactics. Now that you've mentioned this rook check, for example, knight takes pawn. Is this possible? Because after the queen recaptures, can White give a check now? This looks very scary. Because again, if the black rook kind of moves away and captures suddenly after a bunch of trades, the black queen will be kind of free of charge, just captured. This, I mean, suddenly it's getting sharp.
It looks good, that line.
What's wrong with knight takes pawn?
Knight takes pawn.
Yeah, I mean...
maybe there are tactics on the board. For example, black's knight could jump into the centre of the board, breaking the connection between the two white rooks, giving itself up. But if it's captured, then this white rook would fall. It's getting really sharp now.
Yep.
I mean, there's all sorts of tricks, and both players under 5 minutes. So if we go back to the current position, knight takes pawn, may be possible, but a lot of calculation will be required. That's why Magnus has slowed down.
It's quite funny. Look, I think a lot of people don't realise that chess positions, there's so much going on under the surface, right? I mean, they're like, you call them icebergs, right? You've got the iceberg, and then underneath the ocean, you've got this massive bottom of the iceberg. And even in positions like this, which kind of seem fairly straightforward, as in symmetrical pawn structure, doesn't seem like anyone's attacking. You've got always these little tactics, and they are really what kind of drives the position. And, you know, you've got to be so aware of these mini tactics always. I didn't see that knight takes pawn, even though we've been looking at the rook check. And then the other knight coming in. These are very deep tactics in a seemingly simple position. Yeah. Just shows you how complex chess can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Magnus thinking for more than 2 minutes now. One game has finished in the arena. It's a draw between Levon and Alireza Firouzja. And Levon, let's hear from him after that first game.
This ended up being a defensive battle to begin the day.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about knight d4, and then I had to watch out.
Those kind of games when you manage to save a draw, do they give a good feeling, or are you a little bit frustrated that you ended up in the position to begin with?
I didn't think it was so bad. I thought it was a tiny bit worse for me, but it should be a draw, generally.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Wow, big moment.
The fans are inside the Miami arena, and they have some cool tickets today to watch this drama. The spectators in the arena sitting only a few meters away. And the drama, David, is it starting in this game now? Look at the bar.
I think it is starting. According to the computer, at least, Magnus has made a mistake. So we said that this was possible, the knight capture of a pawn, and it holds together with tricks. If the black queen takes the white knight, actually Praggnanandhaa will lose due to the line we showed just a few moments ago. But OK, there we see Stockfish, the computer, says that black has one move to give a significant advantage, and it's a black knight retreat. And Pragg has played it. He's played it and he's turned it around.
Of course he played it, David.
Yeah.
You know,
we're not surprised anymore. Pragg nearly always plays the best move when one is much better than all the other alternatives. Yeah.
Was it a difficult move to find?
Yeah. They say that the most difficult move in chess is always a backward knight move, because you always want to be looking forwards. Knights are so tricky. The black knight, we showed, it could have jumped forward, attacking the white queen in 2 different ways. Instead, it steps back, attacking the white rook, and Magnus has sacrificed a piece. If the white rook, which was under attack from the black knight, if it had moved away, then it would have been safe for black to win white's knight. So Magnus, he's just trying to get the highest price possible for his piece there. So now he's 2 pawns up, Magnus, but his knight is about to drop.
Doesn't seem to be laughing anymore.
No.
After that little exchange of moves there.
So what is it about the position now? Because Magnus obviously made this move. What is it about the position now that has him maybe not too optimistic about it?
Suddenly the stakes are much higher on the board. So we will most likely see a scenario where black has an extra knight, but white has 3 pawns in return. And that's a significant imbalance. White's pawns, if you look at them, they're not very far advanced. They're not very scary. Black's knight doesn't look great right now, but if it activates itself, black is essentially playing with a whole extra piece. So the stakes are higher for Magnus. If he's not accurate, if he doesn't find any active counterplay, he's just going to be a piece down, he's going to be suffering, and he's going to lose the game. It's up to Pragg now to see whether he can take this white knight off the board and go on to convert that material advantage.
He's given a check, but he has to take that knight. And yes, it's disappeared off the board. And Pragg, well, he is in good chances to secure the win. Magnus's hopes in saving the draw probably lie in the fact that there aren't that many pawns on the board. If all the pawns disappear and the queens get traded off, then it probably will fizzle out into a draw. And of course, remember the black king? It's not that safe.
Yeah, and we see on the screen Magnus there. He hesitated before taking a pawn with the white queen just for a few seconds. It was the only move on the board to stay in the game. And now he retreats and he's broken the pin. If you look at the black queen and the diagonal she sits on, white has a rook, white has a queen, and white's king, all on the same diagonal of the black queen. Yeah, he's setting traps, Magnus Carlsen. He's setting a similar trap to the one we showed a bit earlier. The most obvious move in the position now for Pragg would actually be a blunder. So he's hoping that Pragg picks up his knight. Maybe we can show this on the board. We do have this material imbalance. Black's knight is now long-term going to be facing off against 3 white pawns. Everything else is level. If black moves the knight, it looks like black is winning with a fork, a double attack, but white can use this continuous kind of motif, this tactic. White can give a check, hitting the king, and after a bunch of exchanges here, the black queen is no longer protected. So Magnus has set this trap, trying to win the black queen. We won't see Pragg blunder, of course. If he hadn't spotted this blunder, then he would have played this knight jump immediately, but his knight is required to block the 8th rank. Maybe the black queen should move. If the black queen moves, you do set up this threat. So where to go? That's the question. There's a lot of tension on this diagonal. Magnus is setting traps. Pragg, now down to around 2 minutes, needs to solve those threats. And okay, he attacks this pawn with his queen.
But it is just attacking the pawn, though. I mean, it's not actually renewing the threat of the knight attacking the rook because of the same trick. And
yeah, this queen is still on the same diagonal as the white queen. So, okay, how does Magnus protect this pawn, though? If he brings this rook up the board, as Jovanka mentions, this knight jump, he does play this move. This would be met by a nasty check. Same idea we showed earlier. So right now, Pragg, he has to fight against the combined might of these 3 pieces, but they're not really threatening anything. It's so tense. I mean, the computer might favor black, but if white kind of keeps this bind, if white maybe starts maneuvering some pieces towards that black king, who knows? Who knows here? I'm surprised Magnus hasn't reacted, though, because I don't know if he missed this or he kind of got to this position by, he kind of stumbled into it.
I think he must have just, he wouldn't have gone for this position. I mean, why with the white pieces do you want to give away, you know, you're basically allowing your opponent winning chances because the position is now so unbalanced. You're giving Pragg decent winning chances. He's got an extra piece at the end of the day, and you know, it's very likely at some point white could lose another pawn because those pawns are weak. Okay, he's come all the way back now, so now he's trying to bring his knight into the game. I kind of like that move. It's quite a you know, you need to get your pieces rolling, and I like going into the corner of queens because it just looks kind of cool, right? You know, you don't get a chance to do that very often, but his knight will jump out. And this is quite dangerous, I feel, for Magnus now. I mean, he loses with the white pieces, and you know, if he does in round 1, that's going to be a real like upstart to the day. It's not that bad for him because, of course, he's got his pawns and he's got 3 pawns and he's got nice central control, but still.
I was actually wondering about this move on the last turn. Pragg, he had this. He had this position. He could have dropped his queen back immediately. Maybe it was even stronger because this white pawn would be less defended than it is in the game. But either way, in the current position, massive threat on the board. Pragg will win if he gets this knight fork, hitting the queen and rook. So Magnus needs to do something about it. Pressure on the world champion, lower on the clock as well.
I have to say, I just saw a really good answer to your tweet there, and it was yeah, I think it was at the, I don't know if it's this one, but it was the picture of Pragg, and it says, "When you realise you've got to play England on board free for India." And I thought that is such a good, because famously we have the main man sitting next to us who got the gold medal. So
but I didn't play Pragg there.
Wow, I mean, but that was an awesome tweet. So that must be a contender already. I mean,
definitely.
That one, but yeah, I mean, playing the fearsome David Howe, you know, so like.
He won 7 out of 8 games in the Olympia. That's just crazy. 1 draw, 7 wins. Insane.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the queens are off the board in this game. So that is 1 step closer to end his end goal here, Pragg. That black knight now can finally enter the fray, enter the action. And white's pawns still don't look great, especially those 2 pawns on the left side for white. They are isolated, they are potentially weak. You mentioned it, Simon, if one of those pawns drops off, black is going to win this game. So black just needs to coordinate. I think the key here as well is keeping black's A pawn intact. If black can keep the A pawn alive, it's a potential winner in the endgame. It might march down the board. But if that black pawn falls, then, I don't know, black's 2 remaining pawns on the other flank, it won't probably be enough for victory. It's somewhere between a draw and a win here, but it's all about black.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, black's rooks are really active, and black's knight is also well placed as well. And I like what Magnus is doing. You know, he's simply saying, OK, let's just mobilise my extra pawns in the middle of the board.
Yeah, I mean, surely now it's time for black to get his rooks activated. And, you know, that the C pawn, which is the one next to the white rook, looks like a natural target for black to me. You know, you want to find targets and attack them when you're playing chess. And black has here he goes. He's piling on the pressure to that pawn. And I'm wondering how on earth does white actually guard that pawn?
I think he forgets it.
So he is going on defensive, but Pragg plays this knight move immediately. And our words, I love that move, because that knight if it sits in front of that pawn, you're really suffocating the rook. And I mean, you're not going to really get better chances than beating the world champion than a position like this. I mean, this is, there's a lot of work to do, but Pragg has a great chance here. And what a start to today's story it would be if he manages to win with black in round 1.
The trend might continue. Magnus just a slow starter, and he had a great position, the world champion, from the opening, early middle game, and then Pragg just turned it around. Pragg was just tactically sharp at that one kind of crucial moment when everything was happening, and this is the result. Black has just a beautiful endgame. I think if colours were reversed here, if Magnus had the black pieces, it would just be game over. He would win this one. So it's just about Pragg's endgame technique now, which we've seen is very, very good. And, OK, white, meanwhile, centralises his king. The move you mentioned, Simon, that knight is threatening to jump and attack both white rooks.
What if you go a6 here? I mean, I'm just saying, if you move the pawn forwards 1 square, look how embarrassed that rook is. But I guess black can't move either. But it just seems like, we can maybe show it on the board. And look at the rook in front of that pawn. It has no squares it can ever move to. And I'm moving that pawn to take away a square. I mean, that's a very tempting move to play. I don't know, but you've got to think how you improve the position after this move. And he's played it.
He's played it.
But how do you now improve? Because you can't also move the black rooks as well.
He's going to defend this pawn, I guess, with his rook, and then he'll move the knight out of the way at the right moment. He will threaten at some point to start jumping and maybe trying to trap this rook if white isn't careful.
I think he is going to go for your plan, Simon, of trapping the rook.
Maybe this way.
Go backwards and then just push the A pawn forward and just keep on embarrassing that rook.
You can do it again, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Trap this rook on the edge of the board.
It looks horrendous for white, this position.
Really bad for white.
I mean, not just bad, but really bad, I would say. I mean, you're probably going to win the C pawn as well at the right moment. And then you're really just a piece up, aren't you?
And look what Pragg is doing. He's like, I'm not going to rush with that plan. I'm going to bring in my king. And so that's why Magnus quickly moves the rook over and says, no, that piece is not coming to the action.
At the very least here, Pragg can just retreat his knight, hitting this rook. And when the rook moves, he can bring his other knight into the game, hitting this rook, hitting this pawn. He's going to win this pawn. And it's just about whether Magnus here can activate his rooks. The white rooks want to kind of enter the 7th rank and start going for black's 2 weaknesses, the kind of pawns that have been abandoned on the king side. So maybe still some hope for Magnus if he can get his rooks active. But to me, it just seems like if this pawn drops, and then maybe this one drops afterwards, it should eventually be winning. I love Pragg's move, though. Why rush with this plan? This plan is there forever. First, he defends this 7th rank. And if you defend all your weaknesses, what's white going to do? Magnus loves fixing pawns. He's won the Connect 4 game here, for sure. But the rest of his position is just falling apart. At the right moment, black, he does it now. Black will just step back, attacking this rook. The rook's going to move. The black knight's going to hit this rook, hit the pawn, and things are going to start falling.
Magnus also ticking under the minute on the clock now in this dramatic first game in the match. Could Pragg take the lead in this match that will decide the winner of the FTX Crypto Cup? Look at that picture, the 17-year-old head-to-head with the world #1 in an intense fight, but he doesn't seem to be put up by this or any nerves, nothing. Pragg just playing his best chess as always.
Yeah, and his killer instinct has been good in general, Pragg. Normally when he gets the advantage, he converts it. Just, barring that disastrous game yesterday in the tie breaks, but yeah, whenever Pragg has the advantage, he nearly never slips up. I think that's what sets him apart from the rest of this young generation. OK, Magnus centralises 1 rook.
So, OK, let's say you're the captain of a chess team. OK, you can pick 1 Indian player, Gukesh or Pragg. And you've got to decide in 5 seconds, Gukesh or Pragg. You only get one of them.
Pragg.
Pragg?
Just because he's beaten me in...
Gukesh.
OK, right. I don't know.
What do you get? What
about Nihal Sarin? What about Eric?
I was going to say Sarin. You've got so many now. Brilliant young players. We have a pawn being won here, though, and now I think there's still quite a bit of work to do here. But as you said, David, black's A pawn is so important, and it might sort of revolve around whether black can win white's pawn on the side of the board and queen his pawn. Because those, white has those pawns coming up the board. It's not easy to win this one.
Yeah, still a lot of work to be done. He's taken some of the risk out, Pragg, by swapping 1 set of rooks but he's also maybe minimized his winning chances because there's less material on the board. So there's always that imbalance. It's always that kind of judgment call. Do you swap pieces, kind of reduce the chance that you'll come under attack, but also reduce the chance that you have enough kind of firepower later in the game? And oh, the lights went off behind them, really dark in the studio, and lightning there almost. But White is stepping forward on one flank. Those white pawns, scary. The 4 versus 2 advantage White has on the right half, but they will be dealt with quite easily by the Black King and the Black pieces. Magnus, he's just trying to control that Black Knight. If that Black Knight somehow attacks that lonely White A pawn, I think it's going to be game over. It's so close now.
Big question here for Pragg is, you know, is it a good idea for him to trade off rooks? Because, OK, we see Magnus give a check to the rook, but it is possible for the rook to come down to the 3rd row and give a check and attack the pawn and force the rooks off the board.
Yeah, it's Magnus's move, though. He might stop that idea. He pushes his pawn forward. Yeah, it's a good question, Ivanka. The rook's coming off. I guess I would only dream of going for that as Black if you can guarantee that you're ahead in the race. Yeah, I mean, it's just kings, pawns, and even if there's a knight on the board, it's so close, all these races, these pawn races.
I mean, rook across 2 squares is very tempting, isn't it? I mean,
trying to
it is
swap
very,
them off.
Swap them off, yeah. I mean, because
I like this move, you know, because look at the white rook, doesn't have that many squares. And, well, Magnus is going on a huge operation just to trade pawns.
Yeah, Pragg just says, OK, I'm going to control some squares. Big threat now. Black just wants to play pawn takes pawn on this side of the board. If it happened on Black's terms, it would have been very strong. Now this pawn trade. I'm slightly surprised Pragg went for that so quickly. He is low on the clock. White has 2 passed pawns now in the centre of the board, the E and F pawns.
But,
yeah.
OK.
Start marching.
And Pragg is playing very carefully, which fits in so well with this technique that when you're playing with less time on the clock, just make a few moves, overprotect everything, and leave those critical moments for when you've gathered more time on the clock.
There is a funny mistake that Magnus could play here. If he puts his rook in front of the pawn, we could see that same idea. I mean, it's just you know, very unlikely to happen, but it's kind of a move you would look at. But, OK, the king comes in now, and I guess Magnus has just got to use his pawns, use his rook to cause as many problems as he can, and he probably wants to bring the king now in where the white rook is, and Pragg on the offensive. And Pragg's going to pick up another pawn here, isn't he, probably, at some point, I think.
Yeah, he's got to be careful. There's a threat to push White's F-pawn forward. If White's pawn steps forward and attacks the Black Knight, the Black Knight is actually pinned. And the White King also going towards that Black Knight. So Pragg here, most likely, he will move his king. There was an interesting opportunity, actually, on the last move. Pragg could have forced the rooks off by bringing the Black Rook to the 5th rank. He could have done that, and he didn't choose to swap off. He's just not got enough time to work out whether trading off the rooks will win for him. And
could he have still done that last? I mean,
yeah,
can he go back and try that again? I mean, he's got to try to win this position. He can't.
So hard to judge, though, with 15 seconds left.
Yeah.
Such a big game, the biggest match of his career.
10. He's gone under 10 seconds.
Move that king.
And he has moved it to the G7 square. So Pragg is so brave. He doesn't want the draw at all. He's not going to repeat anything. And now I'm guessing the knight is forced back.
Problem is, you might have to repeat the position in order to kind of put your pieces back on their best squares. Black's king is going away again. And which way are you going to go? Either way, you've repeated that position. This is the 2nd time we've seen this position. Also the 2nd time we've seen this position. He's got to be really careful now, Pragg, what he does. Otherwise, the position might repeat, and we'll see a draw if the position repeats for that 3rd time.
Oh.
He has to maybe offer a trade of rooks. He goes for it.
Well played.
Very good move.
This is maybe a little bit of a difference between Pragg and Anish. I don't want to be nasty to Anish, but we saw Anish when he was playing against Magnus. He was getting great positions, but he often took the draw, you know, because his time was getting low. But Pragg is so brave; he's going for it, and I think you've got to go for it, even if it's risky.
Yeah, there was a small missed opportunity. I think Pragg could have forced the rooks off the board. Now Magnus has got his rook out. White's rook in the middle there looked good, but it needed to get out of the way of its own pawns. And now White's central pawns are going to start stepping forward. Suddenly, it's not so easy at all for Pragg. And these 2 white pawns are a bit scary. How do you stop their advance?
He's very short time as well. I mean, you might have to drop back the knight or something. Could be an idea, just to try to handle those pawns. And also, you know, there we go. The knight does drop back, and just wait and see what White's going to do next. because the white rook is quite passive, and okay, it comes to this square, but now it might get harassed a little bit. But white's pawn's just about give him enough compensation at the moment in the centre.
Yeah, look at the clock times. Magnus was down low on the clock, just like Pragg, but he's played so quickly. He's built up a minute and a half now, Magnus. He's gained time with every move. And okay, if he wants now, Magnus can repeat the position by going back to the side.
I don't think he will.
But he can start playing for a win.
Wow.
I think he's going to play on for the win, you know, because the momentum has turned. You know, look at the knight. The knight and the rook have not coordinated well. Meanwhile, white, look at it.
It's a massive threat.
Big threat. Pushing the pawn with the check is nearly checkmate here. And actually, this is now, getting very dangerous for Pragg. I mean, especially with his time, right?
Wow, he's given up his knight. He gave the knight back. He's going to secure the draw most likely now, Pragg, but his winning chances have gone. He gave up the black knight for 2 white pawns. It's level pawns, level material. This game should be heading towards a draw. He bailed out at the right time, though. He lost control, Pragg, and really mature decision with 5 seconds on his clock. He said, OK, I can't lose this game. Of course, a win would have been nice, but I can't lose. And here we see a couple of checks. White's king steps back. It's still white with the advantage because white's king and white's rook are slightly more active than their counterparts. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's just a draw. This is the idea. And switch the rook across. And if white grabs the pawn on h6, then the rook can step forward and actually start munching on the a pawn. And that will be a complete draw. Very, very easy.
Yeah. Then again, Magnus is the master at squeezing out those small advantages, grinding out these endgames. He's smiling there, probably because of something he's listening to. The position itself is not too many chances for white. It looks like Magnus on his screen, he was about to push his passed pawn forward in the middle of the board with white. The problem is black's h-pawn, as Jovanka mentions, if it's allowed to live, it's going to start running. I expect Pragg to start pushing his own passed pawn now. Just not enough material left to win this one with best play, unless there's a big blunder. And there we go. This pawn is a bit of a distraction for white.
And maybe now white can try to get his king to the other side of the pawn to try and force, try and get some checks available. But of course, this is a draw with correct play. But from going from the position Pragg had, he's going to be feeling the pressure quite intensely now. And Magnus now going for this pawn, and I would have thought this is really not going to leave many more chances. OK, this is a clever move because now the white king will come in and at least force black's king backwards at the right moment.
Pragg, though, equally clever, sets
clever.
a nasty trap. If the white rook steps down 2 squares and captures that black pawn, black's rook would have stepped up. There would have been a check and a skewer across the board. Instead, white steps forward, the king is checked back, black's rook is going to go away again, and anytime the white king steps forward, it gets checked away. That's the drawing mechanism there.
And it's so instructive how Pragg doesn't go passive with his rook and get greedy capturing pawns and allowing the white king to reach the 6th row. And instead, every time the king goes to the 5th row, gets checked away. And that's it. Draw.
A dramatic game that ends up in a draw. They are tied after the first game in this intense fight to win the FTX Crypto Cup.